quantum flux or something. So that was not nothing. I'm saying from an absence of everything, no matter, no energy, no potential, can you have something?
You can use that same debate with God.
No.
What created God?
Before we get to that, though, before we get to that,
How should I answer?
can you have something coming from an absence of everything?
No. Thereby, you can't have a God.
Okay, so we can talk about that. We can talk about that. Now, I'm not going to sidetrack your question. So if we agree that we can never have an existence or a lack of existence of everything and anything from which something comes, it necessitates something had to always exist. There could not have been a reality with nothing existing. Would you agree with that?
You're pushing the Big Bang thing, and
No, I'm not. Nothing to do with the Big Bang. Honestly, nothing to do with the Big Bang. Just as a principle. I'm not talking about any scientific theory here. Something had to always exist.
Well, 1 + 1 = 2.
Whatever
That's the truth that always existed.
So what I'm saying to you is, because we've agreed that you can't ever have nothingness bringing something, therefore something has to always exist. I think it's a fair assumption, I think.
Okay, all right. I'll allow it, carry on.
That something can either be a material reality, unconscious, a hard fact, an explanation for itself, but it doesn't have any explanation outside of it, or it can be something immaterial, has a will, has intelligence, brings things into existence when it decides to do so. Those are the only two realities from my assumption. Would you accept that?
No, because I come from a creationist background.
Okay.
And they literally think it's 6,500 years old.
No, I don't believe that. We don't believe
my
that.
rejection of that feeds into my...
No, we don't accept that.
I
I understand, but I'm not here to defend Christianity. And I'm not even talking about Islam at this stage, by the way. All I'm talking to you about is first principles.
Well, just the idea of deism in itself.
Yeah.
Right?
So there has to always be something. It can either be a material existence, no consciousness, no will, no nothing, just matter and energy. As a brute fact, it just exists. Or it has to be immaterial, supernatural, has a will, has consciousness, brings things into existence when it decides. Are there any other, in your rational faculties, possibilities, is there anything else, would you say, or would you think it's reasonable to hold those two positions?
It's turtles all the way down.
No.
It's turtles all the way down.
What I've said to you, is it fair? I mean, as a paradigm, is it reasonable?
It's certainly, my little brain will...
My brain's probably smaller than yours.
But while we are discussing this, you carry on.
Okay. Now, if you do have any contention to whatever I've said, please, by all means, bring it. But
There's two options.
There's two options.
Are
Okay.
there two options?
Now,
Right?
if this thing that you say is material, then clearly it has certain properties, and those properties are assembled in a particular way, and it gives rise to other things. It requires an explanation.
Well, yeah, but the chirality of amino acids and all the rest of it, the building blocks of
Right,
life.
but that still requires an explanation.
Yeah, and they're coming up with them slowly.
Yeah,
slowly.
fine. But what I'm saying to you, that material thing, requires an explanation. And now, the other thing I would say to you is this. Looking at the experiments that Hubble did with redshift and expansion of the universe, etc., and with, of course, the James Webb, which is amazing. I mean, it's 100 times more powerful than the Hubble. It's insane. It really is. It's incredible. We're getting to know more and more about the universe. And the expansion of the universe is something that is widely accepted. And that if we reverse the clock, there is some beginning. Now, whether you say 13.7 billion or 30 billion or 50 billion, but generally the consensus is there is some beginning. if this material thing that had no consciousness and no will gave rise to things without deciding when those things and proportioning them in the way that it did, then it had an infinite amount of history to bring every possible existence into existence, but we only came in 30 odd billion years ago, 13.7 billion years ago. So that indicates that it decided to bring something into existence at a specific time.
So you're a lot more accepting of science than any of the people in my parents' church.
Anyway, I think it's a rational argument. I think it's a reasonable argument. I'm not saying it therefore proves the Islam or proves the Islamic notion of God. I'm not arguing that. I'm just dealing with first principles here. So I think it necessitates the first cause of everything. It itself cannot be created or caused because it would require an explanation, and you can't have an infinite series of material explanations because you can never traverse an infinite series of anything. And therefore, you and I speaking today, there could not have been an infinite series of steps that were necessary to be taken before you and I would be talking.
I am quite a bit of a determinist in the Robert Sapolsky school.
Okay.
In the manner that I do believe that all of the things in my life brought me here today.
Right. A determinist.
On a
Right.
45-year path, right?
Okay.
Not
45, you're lying. I mean, I would have said 30, 35. But,
bless you. No.
you know, that's...
But in all the billions of years,
Yeah.
I'm only here for 45. at the
Absolutely,
moment.
yeah.
And every step of that, all of my
It's
reflections
reliant
of it
upon...
has brought me here today.
Right. So it's a domino.
And you here.
Yeah, so your determinist view is that from the beginning of the universe, and I would say even prior to that, every material step or domino that fell necessitated that you would be here today and we would be talking, but there's no free will, there's no free choice. Everything you've said to me now and everything I've said to you was already determined at the Big Bang, right? That's the determinist view, right?
Yes.
Okay, there's some fundamental problems with that.
Yeah, there are.
Many, in fact.
Yeah.
One of them would be,
It's a good thing to think
how do you then punish a murderer?
Well, that is a very, very good question.
Because he was destined to be a murderer, because if every atom and every molecule bounced off each other in a particular way, it was necessity and necessary for him to commit that murder. He had no choice.
That is a very good, very,
Right?
very, very well made point.
But we don't believe that. That's the point.
No, we don't. There are, though, people that commit murder on the spur of the moment.
Yes.
There are people that...
But he was destined. But he was destined to do that.
Yes.
But they were both destined to do that. That's the point.
But you cannot change your free will. If you have a thought that you have free will.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to go that route, is it my destined to go to hell?
So that's a very good question. So we in Islam have a compatible understanding of free will and God's decree, a compatibilist understanding. So we do believe everything happens by the will of Allah. We believe that Allah is, one of his attributes is, he is the source of all good. Any good that you do is inspired by him, motivated by him, nurtured by him. Now you ask the question, then I haven't done any good and I haven't done any evil. But we believe that Allah has made you responsible for your actions, but he knows every action that you would have taken and the result of that action. And we believe that on the Day of Judgment, nobody will complain to the Creator that you made me do this. They will accept that they were the ones that did it. Now, I just want to clarify one very important point. God's decree and free will can never be fully, logically, rationally reconciled. It's a supernatural concept, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, told us, warned us, do not go too deep into this subject. Leave it.
Yeah. Ignorance is bliss.
Leave it, because you will never get it. But know this, when a companion asked him, then what's the point of doing any good? If Allah has already decreed a matter, what is the point of doing any good?
It's a good philosophical
The
debate
Prophet,
we're
peace be upon him, said something extremely powerful
having. Yeah.
and incredibly deep. Excel and exceed in good works, and know that that is what Allah had decreed for you.
Fair. Well, that is free will.
In other words, exactly. In other words, do your best and know that that is what Allah had decreed for you. So you are still responsible.